Mr. President, I rise today to take just a few moments to talk about John David Levy, who is a nominee for the Federal District Court in Maine, who will be voted on this afternoon. Senator Collins and I have come to the floor together to talk about this nominee and his extraordinary qualifications for this position. My history with John Levy is kind of interesting. He was one of my very first appointments to the bench when I was governor of Maine in 1995. And the important thing that I want to get across is I didn't know him. He wasn't a contributor, a supporter, a political ally in any way, shape, or form. What he was at that time was a really smart lawyer with a judicial demeanor. He was recommended to me, he was discovered, if you will, by a nonpartisan judicial selection committee. I interviewed him, met him, liked him, and appointed him to the Maine District Court, which is our lower court of sort of general jurisdiction, where it's really the people's court. He excelled in that court, both in terms of his decision-making skills, but also his demeanor and his ability to interpret and apply the law in very real and practical circumstances. He was so good, as a matter of fact, that as I was leaving the governorship in the last year or so, I had the opportunity to appoint him to Maine's Supreme Court. In fact, I believe it's true that he's the only person to have gone directly from our district court to the Supreme Court in our state without stopping in the middle at our Superior Court, Court of General Jurisdiction, because he was so outstanding. And he has proven himself as an appellate judge to be exactly what we all hoped and expected would be the case: thoughtful, deliberative, very much sensitive to the real needs of the people who are appearing before the court. He's never forgotten that the law is about serving the public. And so I think he is uniquely qualified, perhaps not uniquely, but especially well qualified for this position, because he's been a trial level judge and an appellate judge, and now is being considered for a federal trial level court, where I think he will be an outstanding judge. I don't think he will be. I know he will be. The other thing that I think is so important, and it happened just a few years ago, I was in our Supreme Judicial Courtroom watching a ceremony where young lawyers were being admitted to the bar. So it's a ceremony that happens every year, and of course to the judges it's fairly routine. To the young lawyers, it's the biggest deal in their lives thus far. It happened that the day I was there to move the admission of a young friend of mine, Justice Levy was presiding. And it was an opportunity for me to watch him interact with the members of the bar and the public. Of course, a lot of members of the public are in the courtroom that day. And his whole demeanor was so thoughtful, dignified, and yet warm and not intimidating. Having practiced law myself, my least favorite judges were those who tried to intimidate members of the court. I remember vividly at one point being in a trial and making an argument to a judge in Maine that wasn't really going very far, and I said, "Judge, I really feel like I'm batting my head against a brick wall here." And after a slight pause, the judge said, "Mr. King, I know of no one in Maine better equipped for that venture." You know, I wasn't all that thrilled by that response, although he was probably right. Justice Levy has a wonderful demeanor. He has that wonderful combination of high intelligence and yet at the same time a warm and thoughtful demeanor that's not intimidating, but allows the litigants, the lawyers, and the witnesses to get their stories out, to get the record complete so that he or the jury can make the best decision. I think he's a judge's judge. He's a judge's judge. And in fact, in seeking comments about his appointment to this position, I think one of the most telling comments came from our Chief Justice of our Supreme Court, where he has been now for some 10 years, and her comment was, "You tell Angus I'm going to get him for this," which meant she didn't want to lose him. And I think that's pretty high praise, that he's been such a valuable member of that court that his colleagues thought that highly of them. John Levy is, as I say, a judge's judge, really a model of what we should want on our federal bench. I'm delighted that he went through the cloture process yesterday. Thanks in part to my senior colleague, he received more than 60 votes. We had, in other words, a significant amount of bipartisan support. He was reported out of the Judiciary Committee on a strong bipartisan basis. And I'm just delighted to be able to rise today and urge my colleagues to support this really extraordinary gentleman who will grace the federal bench in Maine and will, I believe, make us all proud for having supported such an outstanding jurist who has yet many years of service to his state and his country. And I believe that this is a great appointment by the president, and look forward to his performance on the bench. With that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor to my esteemed senior colleague.
Mr. President.
The senator from Maine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm very pleased to join my colleague from Maine, Senator King, in supporting the nomination of Justice John Levy to the United States District Court for the state of Maine. As Senator King has pointed out, Justice Levy has had a long career as an attorney and as a judge in our great state. His experience makes him well qualified for Maine's Federal District Court. He was appointed to the bench by my colleague, Senator King, when he was governor, and Justice Levy currently serves as an associate justice on the Maine Supreme Judicial Court, a position that he has held for more than a decade. Justice Levy's legal skills have been evident for many years. After his graduation from law school, where he was an editor of the Law Review, he clerked in the Southern District of West Virginia. Later, he was appointed to the position of special monitor in the U.S. District Court for Southern Texas. In 1982, John and his wife had the good sense to relocate to Maine, and John entered private practice in York. Although his practice spanned a range of civil and criminal matters, he quickly distinguished himself in the area of family law. John literally wrote the book on family law. He is the author of Maine Family Law, a key resource on this issue for Maine's attorneys. As both an attorney and a judge, John has remained very active with the local bar association and several state committees working to improve the administration of justice in Maine. He has served as president of the York County Bar Association and received its Outstanding Member Award in 2006. He was also honored with the Maine Bar Association's Family Law Achievement Award in 2001. Mr. President, Justice Levy has been an advocate for advancing access to civil justice in Maine. He has championed initiatives to improve pro bono representation for Maine's low-income elderly and affordable representation for other Mainers in need of legal assistance. In the same vein, he helped to launch the Katahdin Council Recognition Program, an annual statewide program that honors Maine attorneys who provide more than 50 hours of pro bono service per year. He's also advocated for these efforts nationally and recently joined the American Bar Association Standing Committee on Legal Aid and Indigent Defendants. He's worked with Maine's Juvenile Drug Treatment Court in Maine's York County, which has seen numerous successes over the years. Mr. President, the combination of experiences that Justice Levy brings to the court, his experience as a private attorney, I think, is so important. His experience as a state judge is critical. His experience in family law, in pro bono representation, makes him a well-rounded individual to serve on our courts. Many times our judges are chosen just from the ranks of either academia or because they have been previously served on the bench. He brings both private sector and judicial experience to this important post, and I believe that he will serve the people of Maine and the nation with distinction, intelligence, and integrity. So I urge my colleagues to support this nomination when we vote later today. And again, I want to commend my colleague from Maine for having the good sense to start Justice Levy on this path, which I believe later today will lead to his confirmation as a federal judge. Thank you, Madam President.